I've got a fun talk for you tonight. This is, hello. Tell Zelda, why don't you show him everything he needs to know about the dojo? Mm-hmm. So I had a great conversation with Tanya the other day, and I have great conversations with Tanya all the time. But I had this interesting idea for a talk because I've had this little guy sitting on my nightstand near my bed for a long time. And some of you might recognize him. This is Bodhidharma, and he does not look as serious as he does in that statue that we have up there. So that guy looks very serious and kind of angry, and he looks over the mats at the dojo to keep us all very focused. This is kind of a fun representation, and they call this the Daruma doll. They call Bodhidharma Damo, and this is a Japanese thing, so the Japanese kind of pronunciation of Damo is kind of like Daruma. And this, there's a lot about this specific doll that I'll talk about, and then I'll get into more of like the philosophy behind it. But I picked up this Daruma in Japan when I visited, and this was about 15 years ago, maybe just shy of that. And I had a great trip. I went to visit my friend who was staying in Tokyo, and I practiced Aikido at the Hombu Dojo, where Ueshiba Sensei is one of the most famous martial artists of all time. He taught Aikido for many years, and this is a big, beautiful school. And so I knew this is one of the places that I wanted to go for forever to practice martial arts. And I was very fortunate to go many times and practice with some incredible people, and I had a great experience there. So while I was there, I picked up Daruma and brought him back to the States. And when you buy this, this is made out of paper mache, and these two eyes here, he comes with the facial hair, and he comes with the red and everything, but these two white circles are empty. So it looks like just empty, open eyes. And this is not because there's nothing going on in Bodhidharma's head, although it is kind of like that. So for those of you who don't know, Bodhidharma was the legendary founder of martial arts and Zen Buddhism. And so I gave a whole talk about him weeks ago, but the idea is he's kind of like sitting in meditation, and he is comes with these white spaces. And what you're supposed to do is when you first get him, you set a goal. So this is oftentimes given as a gift. And what you do is you set a goal and you draw in, I'm pretty sure it's his left eye. And then, yep, you paint the left eye. And in this case, this is a Sharpie. And then you work on your goal until you achieve it. And then once you're done with that goal, then you color in the other eye. And they sell these in temples in Japan, and they do this big ceremony at the end of the year, once a year, and it is called the Daruma Kuyo. And you bring this back to the temple, and they have a huge fire. All the monks come in, they have this procession, they take all these thousands of Daruma dolls and they burn them. And I'm sure there's a lot of symbolism behind this. I did not witness this, but it's kind of cool, this idea of you set your goal, you paint in the eyes, and you bring it to the temple, they burn it, and then it goes up into the heavens, and then you buy another one. So this is a money-making scheme as well. So the temple sell you another one for the next year. And you might have several of these throughout the year, but when I got this, I was already meditating, I already had my martial arts practice, and I thought, I'm going to be real sneaky about this. I thought, I'm working on being free of desire. I meditate all the time, and so I've got it. I've got no desire. So I'm just going to leave both of his eyes blank, and I'll just keep him like this for forever. Well, I was living with my partner at the time, and I came home one day, and she had colored in his eyes. She did not know that you were supposed to do this. She just saw this guy, and she's like, he looked better with some pupils. And so she colored him in, and she did a great job. They got she's got like great cartoon eyes here. They got the little like white part that looks like a reflection of the window or whatever. And I was pissed. Like, I had a desire to keep this guy's eyes unpainted. And so when I got home, I looked at it and I didn't yell at her, but I got as close to yelling at her as I get. And then I thought, like, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Like, having no desires versus now the desires are fulfilled. Kind of the same thing. And it is, and it isn't. And that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. But when it happened, I thought, like, this would be pretty cool if I ended up marrying her, because I could talk about this at the wedding. Like, she fulfilled all my desires. We broke up a couple months later. But I still keep this. This is the only one that I've ever had, and it's fun. There's a great physical component to this. He's got a little bit of comedy to him as well, because if you try to knock him over, he stands right back up like this. And a lot of times they will portray this along with a slogan that you've heard: fall down 7 times, get up 8. And this is like you're trying to achieve your goals and you might not get them right away. You fall down, you get up, and you keep getting knocked down and getting back up. And that is Daruma. So I wanted to talk about something around this. When Tanya and I were talking, we were discussing this idea of hope. And it's like, what's the difference between hope and attachment? And we were kind of like, isn't it the same thing? And then I thought about it, and I said some stuff and she said some stuff. But at first I was like, well, kind of hope is kind of like an attachment to something in the future, right? And it can be that. But recognize that we want to try to be free from attachment if possible. And this is non-attachment. And this is very similar, if not the same thing, as being free from desire. An attachment is a desire. It's a strong desire that things must go a certain way. And I like to think of hope different from that. I think that hope can be a more open-ended kind of just like, wouldn't it be nice if things went in this general direction? But it doesn't have to be a specific attachment. And so I do like to make the distinction between attachment and being committed to something. So an attachment has a specific way that it's got to go, and this is what human beings do. We get this thing stuck in our brains, and it's got to go this way. And if it doesn't, we're unhappy. And this is the problem with all of our human experience. This is where all of our suffering comes from, is we want things, we don't get them exactly the way that we want them, thus we are unhappy. And even if we get them the way that we want them, then we go off and want something else. It's not enough for us. So the real, true kind of highest way, the most consistent way that we're going to be happy and content is to be free from desires, or at least as many of them as we can be free from. So that's an interesting intersection between that and hope, because hope, I think, can be more of a commitment to something, and it can also be nothing. Hope is kind of a very fluffy thing. It's got a more of an ethereal nature to it, right? An attachment is a little bit more specific, and it's got like some structure to it. And the nice thing and the useless thing about hope is it's kind of like, wouldn't it be nice if it were kind of like this, but there's no structure to making that happen. Now look, attachment by itself also doesn't have a structure to make it happen, but when we start talking about setting goals, I do a whole amazing talk. It's the best talk ever. You should trust me on this. But the beginning of the year, I always do a talk about setting goals and achieving them. And I'll probably bring out Daruma and talk about it then too. But when we set goals, again, it's very useful to have a specific thing in mind. The more specific our goal is, the more likely it is to happen. If a goal is very fluffy and up in the air, then it's much less likely to actually happen because we don't know the specific actions that we need to take, right? Now, I fully believe, and this is going to sound like a paradox, it's going to sound like things are kind of in opposition to each other, but I fully believe that you can set goals, very specific goals, and you can be very committed to them, and you can work super hard on achieving them. And when it does not happen, or it becomes clear that it's not going to happen, you can stay committed to the spirit of that goal. For example, my goal is I'm going to meditate every single day. And I've had this goal, and I've happened to stick to it more or less for the last 25 years-ish. But that's not true of everybody. And there have been 24-hour periods of time where I didn't meditate, but then I kind of like snuck it in because I actually meditated in the morning of one day and the night of the next day, and it kind of happened. Or I like had rollover minutes. It was like a very generous plan that I had for myself, like T-Mobile or whatever. But it happened. And there were days where it did not happen the way that I wanted it to happen. And look, let's be honest. Most of my meditations have not been stellar. There have been lots of great meditations, enough to keep me going. But lots of meditations that just sucked. I was sitting there and it was all I could do to stay sitting. And I've got lots of thoughts and my body wants to move and it's a rough time, and that's okay. And then I just sit and then come back to it the next day. If I became attached to the meditation has to be at a certain time every single day, well, that falls apart real quickly. If I'm attached to the meditation has to happen a certain way, it's got to be this kind of experience. And if I don't sit there and like have a wonderful, relaxing time where I feel some kind of a enlightenment type of experience, if I don't experience that, then I'm done with it. You're going to meditate one time and then quit. But you're committed to a meditation practice. That means that no matter how it went, and even if you just missed a day, you just come right back to it the next day. And it could mean, and this is where my mind goes, because I'm sometimes quite morbid. I think like, I want to be able to meditate forever, no matter what. What if a bus hits me and I can't walk? I literally can't sit up. I'm going to meditate laying down if I need to. They've got a breathing tube in me. I can still feel the breath. So that is not the way I want it to go. And I'm going to go ahead and try not to jinx it and get hit by a bus. But even though that's not like the way that I would prefer my life to go, a commitment to meditation could look like that. I'm just going to keep doing it no matter what, and keep doing it the way that I can do it no matter what. This book that we have in the lobby, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, is a really wonderful book. No. That is a really wonderful book. I'm thinking of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And the author makes a big deal about this idea of just sitting. No matter how the meditation goes, that is all you're trying to do. If you just sit, you've accomplished it. Whether your meditation is brilliant or not, whether you spend the whole time just stressing about something or replaying the unfortunate events of your day, you're still sitting, and that's it. And that is the first most important key and step to a great meditation practice. So you kind of get the world of hope versus attachment, or commitment versus attachment, where we can have a goal and we fill in this I, and then the goal is like, I'm going to meditate every day this year. Well, if you're going by the strict definition of it and you get to the end of the year and you didn't do it, you never get to fill in this I. And then you got to just burn them and start all over again next year. So sad. But you can keep going. And maybe this year didn't happen for you, next year it can. The idea is you didn't happen, you got knocked over, and then you stand back up and try again. I think that is a wonderful way to deal with goals and attachments, to be able to let go of it having to look a certain way and to be able to keep going in the spirit of it. In the Prophets, and I like to read this chapter a lot, but I'm not going to read it tonight. There's a chapter on being a great parent. And I'm not a parent yet. I haven't not had that pleasure of that experience yet, although maybe someday soon. But I'm an uncle now. I've got a brand new tiny guy, Emerson, and I love his parents. They're my brother and sister-in-law, and they're wonderful. And they have really had to learn the art of not being attached to things going a certain way. And that does not come naturally to these people. And I love a lot about them, and this is one of the things that I love about them. And it's very different from my approach to life. But it's like, it's got to be a certain way. And then, he's going to throw the food on the ground, and that's the end of everything that you had in mind for that. But this chapter in the prophet, he talks about being a parent and using the analogy of shooting an arrow from a bow. So you're going to put down Daruma now. He's just distracting all of us. So you're a parent and you are the bow, and you're drawing back the arrow that is your child, and you aim it in a direction and you let it fly, and that's it. And you've aimed it in a great direction. You've got a real nice high arch, and you like hope for the best. But you can imagine, and he doesn't talk about this in the it's like a 1-page long chapter, but if you go and you're like chasing after the arrow and you're like, no, you're not going the right way, and you're like pushing it this way and pushing it that way, the arrow's going to fall down, and it's getting overly managed. It's getting micromanaged. You can't do that, right? So you hope for the best. You aim, and you are committed to the best health and success of your child, but at the end of the day, you have to just let it fly. This is a wonderful way of looking at our goals and commitment versus attachment, because it will certainly be our experience. Your goals are like your children. It's going to be your experience sometimes, some days, that you're micromanaging it and it's not turning out the way that you want it to turn out. And you can yell at your goals just like you can yell at your children all that you want, and it's not going to change anything. So you got to be able to kind of massage it from both ends. Like, how can I help? But also, how can I change my expectations? How can I massage that to make it something that I don't always feel like I am disappointed? Because if you're living in that world of disappointment, then you have no energy. It's going to be very difficult to keep going, to keep that commitment. So we want to be committed, which gives us the strength to, change the way that we see our goals and be able to go with the flow. And this is so much of our practice, is being able to go with the flow. If we're attached, we're stuck. But going with the flow allows us to make those split-second changes and to be relaxed enough to feel when it's time to make a little change. So that brings us to desirelessness. And this is a different animal. Being free from desire is not the same as I set a goal and I achieve it. You might get to a place of desirelessness at that point, but more likely what's going to happen is you did it once, and so then you think to yourself, well, I did that, who knows what I can do next? And then you set the next goal. And that's beautiful and brilliant, and this is what makes the world go around. If nobody sets any goals, we're not going to get anywhere. And we can certainly become a slave to that. If our mindset is stuck on, I've got to set my goal and achieve it, and then I got that one, I got to set the next goal and achieve it. That's better than I set goals and can't achieve them. That's better than I've got all these attachments to things and I never get them, and so I'm unhappy because of that. But it's not as consistently happy or consistently satisfied as I have no desire. Now, if it sounds like that's kind of impossible, it kind of is. This is what we're talking about with enlightenment. Like, you're at the highest point of your humanity and your achievement is to be able to actually have no desire. And there's a very funny paradox there, where it's like the highest thing that I can achieve is not wanting to achieve anything. And it's the very desire to achieve that will stop me from being able to achieve. You're sitting in meditation and you need that meditation to be great. Well, your meditation is going to be bad because you need it to be so great. You know, you're sparring with somebody. These guys were sparring earlier in class today. And it's like, if you have to win right now, that's when you get all up in your head, and it's the most impossible to flow and to move in an instant because your own thoughts get in the way. If you are able to let go of all of that and just flow in class, flowing with a partner, this is only going to happen because you have no attachment to it needing to go a certain way. Otherwise, the first time you get hit, you're broke for the rest of the class. You're just like, you'll be wincing, and you'll be like in that mode of revenge. I got to get him back. All that stuff gets in the way. And I don't think you're going to have lots of thoughts of revenge during your meditation, but it's not totally different. Because when you set out to have it go a certain way and you have a really strong desire to have it go a certain way, it won't happen. It will never happen exactly that way. So we can try to get after it by, setting those goals and achieving them and being committed to it and letting go of the little things and just being able to continue going on. But really what it all comes down to, at least in the moment, is letting go. And this is what meditation teaches us to do, because we'll get stuck and then we'll let it go. We'll get stuck on a thought and then we'll let it go. We'll get stuck on needing meditation to go a certain way and we let it go. We're just constantly letting go. And this is the only way that we'll get to that state of desirelessness. Being free from desire is on some level going to happen from just practicing letting go of desire. And that practice might take the rest of our lives. It might take multiple lives if you believe in that. But it won't happen because you get real angry in this moment. You can't force your way through meditation. You can't force your way through letting go of desire. It is usually going to be something that happens over time with lots of practice. And this is me speaking as somebody who is still very much practicing letting go of desire and attachment and all of that. So oftentimes, the best meditation you will have can be, I got to practice so many times letting go in this meditation. I got to practice, hundreds of times. I had an attachment to a thought and I let it go. I got to practice many times getting that feeling of, I'm supposed to be meditating right now and I'm sitting here thinking about this nonsense that happened a week ago and what is this? And then letting it go. I got to practice over and over and over again. And this can be wonderful. It might not feel wonderful in the moment, but that is what we're trying to kind of allow ourselves that leeway. If your meditation feels like you're fighting yourself, it's normal. And you want to be able to just allow it to disappear. If you feel like meditation is constantly a battle of, recognizing thoughts and kind of fighting against them, that's not quite it. It's a little tweak to constantly recognizing thoughts, and then instead of fighting, just let it go. And you might label it as thoughts. You might just give yourself a break and recognize that this is part of the natural course of meditation, the natural course of this meditation, and the natural course of just continuing on in our meditative practice. But just like Daruma, you're going to recognize that attachment. You're going to be like, oh, this meditation is awful. And then you just come back to your center. So you'll notice how he sits up straight and still. He's got a great posture. Even if he gets knocked over, he comes right back up to it. This is how we're going to sit tonight. So I'll quickly go over the details of posture. Sit comfortably. So you want something to sit on? Yeah. Tanya, can you grab something to sit on real quick? So I'll go over a couple of options. Cross-legged is great. That doesn't work on this bench, but it can certainly work on a meditation cushion. And I prefer to sit in Seiza like this just because, no, get him a Zafu. I prefer to sit in Seiza because my hips and my knees don't cooperate with sitting cross-legged very well. But whether you're cross-legged or kneeling, You do not want your knees to stick up above your hips. If you do that for a few minutes, you're fine. If you do that over the next 15, 20 minutes, your legs are probably going to fall asleep and it's going to get quite painful. And if you are sitting on the zafu and you're having a hard time with it being flat to the ground, you can actually turn it up on its side and you can get a little bit higher if you guys want to with the hips or your knees, you can do that. But if you're comfortable where you are, great. Now the back. So there are lots of kinds of meditation. I've not yet seen one that says you should meditate like this. So you want your spine stacked, your shoulders more or less over your hips. If you are slouching like this, and this comes down to where your hands are as well, if your hands are starting to slide down, then this is not going to be a good meditation. At best, you'll be sleepitating. At worst, you'll actually just be straight up on the ground. So hands here, they can be together, they can be separate. Some people like to have specific positions with the hands. I don't care that much what you guys do as long as your hands are still. If you're moving your hands around a lot, you're scratching, you're doing all this, that's not what we want. So we want to be here. The shoulders are rolled back and relaxed. Your chin is parallel to the ground. You can also think of raising the crown of your head straight up towards the ceiling or the sky. And this is a great kind of shortcut to getting a good posture. From here, we'll close eyes. You're going to have your eyes slightly upturned with your eyes closed. Now, again, there are many options of what to do with your eyes. Generally, they're closed. They might be open. But looking slightly up for most people helps you to associate this position with a raised consciousness versus looking straight ahead or down might be more like everyday consciousness or sleeping or subconscious. So slightly raising the eyes will also help you to stay awake. It's almost impossible to fall asleep if you're looking slightly up. And if you find that your eyes are crossing during meditation and you're getting a headache, you don't want that either. So just slightly raising the eyes. If you have a hard time getting that position, you can actually open your eyes and look at something out in the distance that's above your head, and then close your eyes while still kind of focusing them in that position. And from here, we're going to relax and watch the breath. We'll start with a couple of deep breaths together. We'll do this as a breathing exercise, and then we'll let go of the breath. So begin with all the breath out. Breathe in through the nose. We'll hold it for a few seconds at the top, and breathe out. Out through the nose or the mouth. As you breathe in, breathe from the belly using the diaphragm. Hold. And out. Try to breathe a little bit deeper, a little bit slower. And you hold it at the top. Make sure you're not straining. It shouldn't feel like a pain in your ribs. And as you relax, try to get a complete exhale so that you can fully inhale for the next one. Last couple of deep breaths in. Hold at the top. And out. One more breath all the way in. Hold. And we'll finish with a double exhalation. Now just let the breath come in. And let the breath go out. So we've subtly changed our focus to no longer manipulate the breath. We're no longer trying to achieve anything with the breath. We're not really trying to achieve anything. Just sitting and breathing. And you watch the breath like an outside observer. Feel it without trying to change it. And do the same with your thoughts. If you can observe your thoughts like an outside observer, we won't attach to them as readily. As soon as the thought enters your mind, you can let it go. If you find that you're having a hard time releasing a specific thought, you can just label it as thought. There's no judgment. It is just a thought. And then return back to the breath. Do that as many times as you can for the rest of the meditation.